The girl lived in a small, quiet town where everyone seemed to know each other. The streets were narrow, lined with old houses, some with peeling paint and gardens that were overgrown. But it had a certain charm that made it feel safe in a way. She had only one leg, the result of an accident when she was very young. Since then, life had been a quiet struggle for her. Each day felt heavy, not just because of the physical challenges she faced, but because she always felt a little out of place, always different from everyone else. Her mornings were the hardest. Getting out of bed meant balancing carefully, swinging herself onto her crutches with a kind of practiced patience. She would sometimes take a long time to start moving, staring out the window as the sun rose, watching the world outside go on as if she belonged in it. She wanted to, but it wasn't easy. School was never a place she looked forward to. Other kids could run freely, play games, and climb the playground structures without a second thought. She could only watch, wishing she could join them, but always feeling like she didn't belong. The neighbors were kind in their own way, but their kindness sometimes felt heavy on her heart. People would look at her with pity or speak a little louder as if she couldn't understand normal conversation. She hated that feeling. She wanted to be seen as herself, not as someone to feel sorry for. But most of the time, she kept to herself, wandering the quiet streets or spending time in her small garden at home. The garden was one of her favorite places. She liked planting flowers and watching them grow. It gave her a small sense of control over her life, something that was always welcome in her quiet, careful routine. Her mother had passed away when she was very young, and her father had moved away to work in another city. That left her with her grandmother, a kind woman who did her best, but was old and sometimes too tired to do everything. They lived in a small house that smelled faintly of old books and flowers, a comforting mix, but it also reminded her of how lonely her life had become. She often thought about how different life could have been if her leg had never been taken from her. She wondered what it would feel like to run, to jump, to be just another kid with dreams and no limits. Sometimes in the quiet of the night, she would cry quietly, not because she was weak, but because she missed a life she had never fully lived. School days were particularly difficult. Teachers tried to be kind, but there were limits. Other children stared or whispered. Some didn't mean to be cruel, but it still hurt. She learned to keep her head down, to move slowly through the hallways, and to avoid drawing attention. The cafeteria was the hardest. She had to navigate narrow aisles and avoid jostling from other kids. Lunch was often eaten alone, and she had learned to accept it without complaint. Still, every day she hoped for something different. Even if she didn't know what that something might be, her favorite escape was the small park at the edge of town. It wasn't much, a few swings, a slide, a sandbox, but it was a place where she could watch other kids play, imagine herself running with them, and feel a little less trapped in her own body. Sometimes she would bring a book, and the pages would transport her to worlds where she could run, climb, and explore without limitation. The park was her secret refuge, where she could breathe and dream quietly, away from pitying glances and whispered words. Evening brought a different kind of challenge. Walking back home with her crutches when the sun was setting could be painful, but she liked watching the sky turn soft shades of orange and pink. She imagined that if she could just reach the end of the street faster, maybe the world would finally feel like a place for her. At home, her grandmother would have dinner ready. They would eat quietly, talking in soft voices. Sometimes the girl would share small stories about her day, things she noticed in the park or in the garden. But even in these moments, a quiet sadness lingered. She wanted more friends, more laughter, more life. Her nights were the loneliest. Sometimes she would lie awake listening to the quiet hum of the town outside her window, thinking about what it would be like to be normal, to run and play without thinking twice. But she also learned to find small joys, the way the moonlight fell on her books, the scent of flowers from the garden, the soft voice of her grandmother reading her favorite stories. These small moments kept her going. Even on days when the weight of loneliness felt unbearable, despite her struggles, she had a quiet strength. She had learned to do things for herself, to move carefully and deliberately, to navigate the world in her own way. Her crutches had become extensions of her own body, tools that allowed her to exist in a world that wasn't always kind. She learned patience, resilience, and a kind of quiet courage that only those who face life's challenges head-on could understand. And deep down, she held on to a hope, faint but persistent, that one day her life could change. That maybe someone would see her not as a girl with one leg, but simply as a girl with a heart full of dreams, waiting for the world to notice. As days passed, she continued her routine, moving through life slowly, but with quiet determination. Each morning brought a new challenge, each afternoon a quiet longing, and each night a gentle hope that tomorrow might be different. And even though the world often seemed indifferent, she never let go of the possibility that one day something wonderful could happen, something that might finally change her lonely, quiet life into one filled with warmth, friendship, and joy. The quiet life of the girl was about to change, though she didn't know it yet. One afternoon, as she was slowly moving along the sidewalk with her crutches, a moving truck stopped in front of the house across the street. Boxes were carried in and out, and soon a man appeared, his face tired but gentle. Pushing a stroller with a small child inside, the girl watched quietly from the edge of her garden, curious but cautious. People often came and went, but something about this man and the little boy made her pause. There was a softness to them, a calm energy that seemed different from the usual hurried or careless neighbors days past. She continued to notice them. The man, a single father, spent time outside with his son, teaching him to ride a small bike, laughing when the boy fell, and picking him up with care. She watched from her window, feeling an unusual warmth in her chest, a mix of curiosity and a little hope she hadn't felt in a long time. The man would sometimes look toward her garden and smile politely, and though she didn't know his intentions, she felt a little less alone in the world. One afternoon, the girl decided to sit at the park, where she usually spent her afternoons. The father and his son appeared there too. She found a quiet bench, and they approached with their usual ease. The little boy waved shyly at first, and she waved back. The father noticed her crutches and the careful way she moved, but he didn't look at her with pity. Instead, there was a curiosity in his eyes, a gentle question about who she was and what she liked. It started with small talks. The father would ask her about the books she read, the flowers in her garden, or the drawings she sometimes carried in her backpack. She was surprised at how easy it was to talk to him. He didn't speak too loudly or treat her like she was fragile. He listened, really listened, and for the first time in years, she felt like someone truly saw her. It wasn't pity, it wasn't sympathy, it was something else. Something that made her chest feel lighter. The little boy loved her immediately. He had a bright curiosity and didn't care about her missing leg. He wanted to know if she could play catch, or if she liked the swings. She hesitated at first, but decided to try. She found herself laughing when he fell off the swing in an ungraceful but funny way. That laughter surprised her. She hadn't realized how much she missed the sound of it, the simple joy of being part of something, even in a small way. The father noticed the change in her demeanor. Each time they met, she seemed a little more open, a little less guarded. He encouraged her gently, suggesting small activities that she could manage, always careful not to overwhelm her. They would walk slowly together, her crutches keeping her steady, while the little boy ran ahead and then returned to check on her. Over time, the girl began to feel a sense of belonging she hadn't known since her childhood. It was a small circle of life, quiet but full of meaning, and it began to reshape the lonely patterns she had grown used to. Sometimes, the father would share small stories about his own struggles as a single parent, and she realized that even adults had challenges. This made her feel less alone, knowing that life could be complicated for everyone, not just her. He never judged her or made her feel weak. Instead, he celebrated her small victories, like reaching the end of the park without resting or helping the little boy climb onto the slide safely. With every small step, she felt a little stronger, a little more capable. They also shared afternoons in the garden. The father admired the flowers she planted and even helped her dig small holes for new seedlings. She laughed when the little boy tried to plant a flower upside down, and they all got a little dirty in the process. That dirt, the laughter, and the shared effort felt like something she had been missing her entire life. These moments slowly chipped away at the walls she had built around herself, and she began to realize that it was okay to rely on someone, to trust a little, to let herself feel happiness. Evenings became different too. She looked forward to walking past their house, where she could sometimes see them having dinner together. The warmth of their presence reminded her that life could be gentle. Care and kindness could exist in a world that often seemed indifferent. She thought about her grandmother and how proud she would be to see her smiling again, interacting with others, and sharing joy. This gave her a new sense of purpose, a little hope that life might not always be quiet and lonely one day. The father invited her to help with a small project in their backyard. They were building a small birdhouse for the little boy, and he asked if she would like to paint it. She hesitated, thinking she might be clumsy, but the father's calm encouragement made her try. She chose bright colors, and together they painted the birdhouse, her hands steady, her heart light. The little boy cheered her on, and she laughed freely, feeling a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. It was a small thing, but it mattered more than anything she had experienced recently. She started noticing changes in herself. Walking felt a little easier. Her laughter came more naturally, and she even started talking to other children in the park. Inspired by the encouragement she received from the father and his son, small interactions, once intimidating, became opportunities to practice courage and kindness. She was learning that she didn't have to hide from the world, that people could surprise her with goodness, and that trust, once built slowly, could blossom into something meaningful. The bond between them grew quietly but steadily. She looked forward to their meetings, no longer out of curiosity alone, but out of genuine connection. The father respected her space, never forcing conversation or interaction, yet always there when she needed support. The little boy, with his innocent enthusiasm, reminded her that life could be joyful, even in small doses. Together, they created a space where she could feel safe, valued, and seen. It wasn't just about companionship. The girl began to notice her own strengths, the ways she could manage challenges, and the small victories in everyday life. With gentle guidance, encouragement, and shared laughter, she started to feel more confident, more capable, and more connected to the world around her. For the first time in a long time, she imagined a future where her life could be more than quiet struggle and loneliness, even as the days passed. She knew that life was unpredictable. There would still be moments of difficulty, pain, and doubt. But now, she also had moments of warmth, friendship, and hope. The father and his son were not just visitors in her life. They were the first signs of a world that could be kind and welcoming. And she began to understand that happiness could be found even in small interactions, even in quiet afternoons spent painting a birdhouse or walking slowly through the park. It was in these moments that her sad, quiet life started to take its first steps toward something new, something brighter, and something that could one day be full of joy. As the days turned into weeks, the girl's life slowly began to change in ways she had never imagined. Her friendship with the single father and his little boy grew deeper, and the bond they shared became an important part of her everyday life. She looked forward to the afternoons at the park, the quiet walks, and even the small chores she helped with. Each moment felt meaningful, as though her existence mattered in ways she hadn't felt before. The father was patient, never rushing her or pushing her beyond her comfort zone. He would suggest small activities like tossing a ball gently to the little boy and asking if she wanted to try catching it. At first, she hesitated, worried about falling or failing, but the father's calm encouragement gave her courage. Slowly, she began to participate. She laughed when she missed a throw, and the little boy clapped for her anyway, his joy infectious. These small moments of connection made her heart feel lighter. She started to believe in herself in ways she hadn't before. One day, the father asked if she wanted to help with a special project. They were planning to create a small garden near their house, and he wanted her input on what plants to include. She felt nervous at first, but excited too. Choosing flowers, arranging the soil, and planting the seeds became a shared adventure. The little boy ran around, helping as best he could, while the father guided her gently, praising her efforts. She felt proud, a new kind of pride that came not from perfection but from doing something with care and heart. Watching the small seedlings take root and grow reminded her that life, like a garden, could be nurtured and transformed. Through these interactions, she began to open up more. She shared stories about her favorite books, the things she noticed while walking in the neighborhood, and her dreams for the future. The father listened patiently, offering advice when needed, but mostly just hearing her words and valuing them. She realized that talking about herself didn't make her weak or strange, it made her human. And in the warmth of their growing friendship, she began to feel more confident about expressing herself. Even in small ways. Her confidence started to show in little ways at school too. She tried speaking up more in class, answering questions that she would have normally avoided. She even helped a few classmates understand something they were struggling with, feeling proud when they thanked her sincerely. The laughter she shared with the father and his son gave her a sense of joy that carried over into her school life. It wasn't immediate, and there were still days when she felt shy or unsure. But the steady encouragement and friendship she experienced outside of school helped her navigate those moments. The little boy became a constant source of happiness. He was always full of energy, curious about everything, and his innocence reminded her of simpler joys. He didn't care about her missing leg, didn't hesitate to ask her to play, and didn't shy away from her cautious nature. He ran to her, holding out his hand, asking if she wanted to join in, and she often found herself smiling and saying yes. Playing together, whether it was a game of catch, a pretend adventure, or building little things in the garden, became moments of pure joy that she treasured the father. Observing these interactions gently guided them, ensuring the girl felt safe and supported. He taught them about patience, respect, and caring for one another. Through his example, she began to understand that true connection comes from understanding, not rushing, and from valuing each other's presence, not just the outcomes of their actions. She saw that kindness could be quiet, consistent, and deeply impactful, far more than words or grand gestures ever could. One afternoon, they decided to take a short trip to a nearby park with a small pond. The father asked if she wanted to feed the ducks, and she hesitated, thinking she might be clumsy or slow. But the father smiled and said it didn't matter. Together, they tossed crumbs to the ducks, laughing when a few fell in the water. The little boy squealed with delight, and she laughed too, feeling a freedom she hadn't felt in years. That day, she realized that happiness could be found in simple moments, and that sharing those moments with others made them even richer. As the seasons began to change, the father and his son continued to be part of her life. Autumn brought colorful leaves and cool breezes, and they would go for walks, crunching leaves under their feet, sharing stories, and sometimes quietly just enjoying each other's company. She began to see the world in a slightly brighter light. Noticing details she had ignored before, the way sunlight filtered through the trees, the sound of wind through the branches, the smiles of neighbors passing by. These small details, once unnoticed, now felt like treasures. And she realized that her perspective had begun to shift because of the gentle presence of the father. And his son's school life continued to improve slowly. She started to make a few friends, children who saw her for who she was, not just for what she lacked. They would invite her to join small activities, and though she still used crutches, she felt a growing sense of belonging. The encouragement from her new friends, combined with the steady support from the father and his son, made her realize that life could be more than lonely days and quiet struggles. There were people who could understand, accept, and celebrate her presence. Her relationship with her grandmother also deepened. She shared stories about her afternoons with the father and his son, about the small adventures, the laughter, and the garden projects. Her grandmother smiled, proud to see her growing more confident and joyful. They would sometimes work together on small gardening tasks at home, and the girl felt a new kind of connection. A bridge between her past and the more hopeful present. Evenings became moments of reflection and quiet joy. She would sit by her window thinking about the day, about the laughter she had shared, and about the small victories she had achieved. She noticed how her own perception of herself was slowly changing. She was more confident in her movements, more willing to try new things, and more open to the kindness of others. The father's patient guidance had shown her that it was possible to trust again, to let people into her life without fear, and to find happiness in the company of those who truly cared. She also began to explore new interests. Inspired by the father's encouragement, she tried drawing again, something she had abandoned when she felt life was too heavy. Her sketches were simple at first, but the joy of creating something with her own hands brought a sense of accomplishment and pride. Sometimes she would show her drawings to the little boy, who would point out what he liked, and the father would comment gently, praising her effort and creativity. These moments, small but meaningful, became stepping stones toward a stronger sense of self. The father also introduced small life lessons, teaching her how to care for the environment, the importance of patience in growing plants, and the value of helping others without expecting anything in return. She absorbed these lessons quietly, realizing that they applied not just to plants or animals, but to people as well. Her perspective on life was broadening. She felt equipped to handle challenges with more resilience and understanding. Through all these experiences, she noticed a change in how she viewed her own abilities. She started setting small goals for herself, walking a little farther without resting, helping with bigger tasks in the garden, or speaking up in class without hesitation. Each goal achieved, no matter how minor, boosted her confidence and reminded her that she was capable. The father's support had been crucial, but it was her own determination that turned encouragement into real growth. By now, the bond between the three had become almost like a small family. They shared laughter, small adventures, and quiet moments of reflection. The girl no longer felt like a lonely observer of life. She was an active participant. The world, once heavy and indifferent, was becoming a place where kindness, patience, and shared joy made life feel lighter. She realized that even though challenges remained, she had found a network of support and care that gave her the courage to face them. As the days grew longer and warmer, the little garden outside the father's house flourished, much like the girl's own life. Each flower blooming, each small bird visiting, and each laugh shared became symbols of growth, resilience, and new beginnings. She had learned to cherish small victories, to embrace moments of joy, and to trust that life could offer more than loneliness and struggle. And in the gentle presence of the father and his son, she discovered that real change doesn't happen all at once. It grows quietly, patiently, and steadily, transforming life in ways that feel natural and meaningful. Life had taken on a rhythm that felt comforting and new. The girl found herself eagerly looking forward to each day, knowing that moments of joy and friendship awaited her. The father and his little boy were no longer just friendly neighbors. They had become a central part of her life, people she could trust and rely on. Even her grandmother noticed the change. Seeing her granddaughter smile more, laugh more, and embrace life with a confidence that had been missing for years. One bright morning, the father suggested that they all go on a small outing to a nearby community fair. It was a place full of colors, laughter, and a variety of little stalls and activities. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Crowds could be overwhelming, and she had always worried about navigating busy places with her crutches. But the father's calm reassurance gave her courage. "Take your time," he said softly. "We're here together, and there's no rush." That simple phrase made her feel safe, and she decided to go. At the fair, the little boy ran ahead, giggling as he chased bubbles floating in the air. The girl followed slowly, taking care with each step. But she allowed herself to smile genuinely for the first time in a long while. She noticed the vibrant colors of the stalls, the aroma of freshly baked treats, and the cheerful chatter of families enjoying their day. For a moment, she felt as if she were part of something larger. A world full of life and possibility. They explored the stalls together. The father encouraged her to try small games, like tossing rings onto bottles or shooting little hoops. At first, she hesitated, unsure of her abilities, but the father's patience and the little boy's excitement made her try. She missed several times, but each attempt brought laughter and encouragement. The little boy cheered, clapping his hands, and the father smiled proudly. It was not the success that mattered, but the courage to try. And in that courage, she felt a new kind of freedom. They shared cotton candy, sticky and sweet, and the little boy insisted she try the pink strands first. She laughed when some stuck to her fingers, and the father helped her clean it off gently, making a small joke that made them all chuckle. It was a day filled with small victories and shared moments, and she realized that joy could be found in the simplest experiences, especially when shared with others who cared. As the afternoon went on, the father noticed a small stage set up for performances. Children were performing songs and dances, and a small crowd had gathered. He asked if she would like to watch, and she nodded eagerly. They found a spot at the edge of the crowd, her crutches steadying her. She watched with fascination as children performed with confidence, their laughter and applause filling the air. The father explained quietly that everyone starts somewhere, and each performance, no matter how small, is a step toward confidence. She felt inspired, imagining what it would be like to share her own talents someday, after the fair. They walked slowly back home. The little boy chatted nonstop, sharing his excitement and recounting everything he had seen. The girl listened, sometimes adding her own observations. For the first time, she felt like an active participant in someone else's life, not just an observer. The father smiled quietly, noticing how she had grown, how her laughter was more natural, and how her confidence had begun to shine through. It was a subtle but meaningful transformation, and he was proud of her. Back at the house, they decided to start a small project together. The father suggested building a small bird feeder to hang in their garden, and she eagerly agreed. Gathering materials, painting, and assembling the feeder became a shared activity. The little boy helped as much as he could, and together they created something tangible. It's a symbol of their teamwork and growing bond. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, seeing something she had helped create come to life. The father praised her efforts, but more importantly, he showed genuine appreciation for her contributions. Evenings at home were quiet but meaningful. She shared stories about the day with her grandmother, who listened with a proud smile. The girl spoke about the laughter, the games, and the small victories she had experienced. She realized that happiness was not a distant dream, but something that could be woven into everyday life. It was in shared smiles, gentle words, and the simple act of trying, failing, and trying again. These lessons learned through gentle guidance and lived experience became a foundation for her growing confidence. At school, she began to approach challenges differently. She spoke up more often in class, participated in activities, and helped classmates when they struggled. The support she received from the father and his son translated into a quiet strength that allowed her to face situations she would have once avoided. She no longer felt invisible. She felt capable. The small victories at school, though unnoticed by many, were milestones in her journey towards self-confidence and resilience. One day, a challenge arose that tested her newfound confidence. A school event required participation in a group activity, and she was asked to join a team. Anxiety surged at first, but she remembered the father's encouragement, the small successes at the fair, and the supportive presence of the little boy. Taking a deep breath, she joined the group. She contributed ideas, helped execute the plan, and even led a small part of the activity. By the end, her teammates congratulated her, and she felt a profound sense of achievement. It was a moment that reinforced her belief in herself and showed her that courage, patience, and perseverance could overcome fear. The father continued to be a steady presence in her life. He celebrated her successes, offered gentle guidance during setbacks, and provided unwavering support. His encouragement was never overbearing. It was quiet, consistent, and nurturing. Through his example, she learned that trust, patience, and kindness could transform relationships and create a sense of security and belonging. The little boy's innocence and energy remained a source of joy. He continued to include her in games, adventures, and small projects. His laughter was contagious, and his enthusiasm reminded her to appreciate simple pleasures. Together, they built a world filled with shared experiences, learning, and growth. The father's guidance, combined with the boy's genuine friendship, created an environment where she could flourish. She also began to explore new creative outlets. Encouraged by the father, she tried writing short stories and sketching scenes from her daily life. Each creation was met with gentle praise and encouragement, reinforcing her sense of accomplishment. She discovered that her imagination and creativity could be tools for self-expression and personal growth, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The garden outside their house became a symbol of transformation. Each plant, flower, and small bird that visited the bird feeder represented growth, resilience, and hope. Working in the garden with the father and the little boy became a routine that brought joy, patience, and a sense of shared responsibility. Through these small acts of care, she learned that nurturing life, whether it was a plant or a friendship, required dedication, attention, and love. As the days grew longer, her life continued to transform quietly but profoundly. She learned to navigate challenges with patience, embrace small victories, and find joy in shared moments. Her relationships with the father and his son provided a foundation of trust, care, and support that allowed her to grow emotionally and socially. Each day, she became more confident, more resilient, and more connected to the world around her. The girl realized that change didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, built on small interactions, shared experiences, and consistent encouragement. The father's quiet guidance, the little boy's infectious energy, and the simple joys of everyday life combined to create a life that was no longer dominated by loneliness and struggle. She had discovered that even in the face of challenges, happiness, connection, and personal growth were possible. And in the warmth of their presence, she began to imagine a future filled with hope, confidence, and a sense of belonging that she had never thought possible. By the time spring had fully arrived, the girl's life had changed in ways she could hardly have imagined months ago. Her days were no longer quiet or lonely. Each morning, she woke up feeling a sense of anticipation, wondering what small joys the day might bring. She had grown more confident, more patient, and more willing to embrace the world around her. The bond she shared with the single father and his little boy had become a central part of her life, a source of support, laughter, and warmth that she could rely on. One sunny morning, the father suggested they go on a little adventure outside the town to a nearby lake. The girl felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Being in new places had always made her anxious. The father's calm reassurance reminded her that they were together, and that made everything feel safer. They packed a small picnic, bringing sandwiches, fruit, and juice. The little boy was bubbling with excitement, chattering about the ducks he hoped to see and the little boats floating on the water as they reached the lake. The girl paused to take in the view. The water sparkled under the sun, and the gentle breeze made the leaves rustle softly. For the first time in a long while, she felt a deep sense of peace. The father helped her find a comfortable spot to sit, adjusting her crutches so she could rest, and the little boy ran ahead to explore. They spent the morning feeding ducks, skipping stones, and laughing at the little boy's imaginative games. She found herself laughing freely, without hesitation, enjoying the moment fully. During the picnic, the father spoke about dreams and goals, encouraging her to think about what she wanted in life. He didn't pressure her, but he asked questions that made her reflect on her strengths and passions. She realized she had many talents and interests she had ignored, believing they didn't matter. Slowly, she began to see possibilities for herself beyond her limitations. The little boy added his own thoughts, reminding her that imagination and joy could be found anywhere, even in the smallest adventures. After lunch, they decided to explore a small trail around the lake. She walked carefully, using her crutches, and the father stayed close, always ready to help if needed. The little boy ran ahead, then returned to check on her. She began to notice things she had never paid attention to before: the smell of wildflowers, the sound of birds singing, the patterns of sunlight filtering through the trees. Each detail felt alive, beautiful, and worth noticing. She realized that the world was full of small wonders, and that she could be part of it. Even with her challenges, the father encouraged her to try small physical challenges, like stepping over little rocks or balancing on a fallen log. At first, she hesitated, worried about falling, but he guided her patiently, praising every attempt, no matter how small. With each step, she felt a sense of accomplishment and growing confidence. She began to believe in her own strength, realizing that she was capable of more than she had imagined. The little boy clapped and cheered her on, and his excitement fueled her determination. As they returned home, the girl reflected on the day. She felt proud of herself for trying new things and enjoying the experience without fear. She realized that her life had transformed, not because of grand gestures, but because of small, consistent moments of support, friendship, and trust. The father and his son had shown her that she was not alone, that her presence mattered, and that life could be filled with joy. Even amidst challenges in the days that followed, she continued to grow and explore new opportunities. At school, she volunteered to participate in more activities, helped classmates, and shared her ideas confidently. She discovered that she could contribute meaningfully and that her voice and actions mattered. Her relationships with peers improved, and she found herself surrounded by friends who respected and valued her. The encouragement she received from her new circle of support reinforced her self-esteem, the sense of belonging. She also continued to nurture her creative interests. Drawing, painting, and writing became regular activities, and she often shared her creations with the father and his son. They celebrated her efforts, offering praise and encouragement without pressure. She learned that creativity was not about perfection, but about expression and joy. Each piece she created became a reflection of her growth, her resilience, and her renewed sense of self. The garden outside the father's house flourished alongside her own personal growth. Together, they planted new flowers, built small birdhouses, and cared for the soil. Each day spent in the garden was a lesson in patience, responsibility, and the rewards of nurturing life. She learned to appreciate the process, not just the outcomes, and realized that growth, whether in plants or in herself, took time, care, and dedication. One afternoon, the father suggested they have a small celebration for the little boy's birthday. She helped plan decorations, bake a cake, and organize simple games. The event was filled with laughter, excitement, and shared joy. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing she had contributed to something meaningful for someone she cared about. The celebration reinforced the idea that happiness could be created through care, effort, and love, and that shared experiences were some of life's most valuable treasures. As spring gave way to summer, the girl continued to embrace life with confidence and hope. She recognized that challenges would still arise, but she now had the tools, support, and resilience to face them. The father's guidance, the little boy's friendship, and her own determination had transformed her perspective. She no longer viewed herself as limited by her past or her physical condition, but as capable, valued, and deserving of joy. Evenings became moments of reflection and gratitude. She would sit by her window, thinking about the day's experiences, the laughter, and the lessons learned. She realized that life's beauty was in the connections she had formed, the small victories she achieved, and the moments of joy shared with others. The father and his son had shown her that even amidst challenges, life could be filled with kindness, patience, and hope. In the final weeks of summer, the girl experienced a sense of fulfillment she had never known. She walked with her crutches more confidently, participated fully in school and social activities, and continued to nurture her creative passions. The garden thrived, symbolizing growth and renewal, just as her own life had transformed. She had learned that change came gradually, through consistent effort, trust, and support, and that happiness could be found in both small and significant moments. Her bond with the father and his son remained strong and unshakable. They had become a family in spirit, sharing laughter, challenges, and triumphs. The little boy's energy and curiosity continued to inspire her, while the father's gentle guidance provided stability and wisdom. Together, they had created a life filled with joy, connection, and growth, demonstrating the profound impact of compassion and presence. As summer ended, she reflected on how far she had come. From a quiet, lonely girl confined by fear and self-doubt, she had grown into someone confident, hopeful, and capable. She had learned that trust, patience, and genuine care could transform life, and that small, consistent acts of kindness and encouragement could lead to profound change. She realized that happiness was not a distant dream, but a reality that could be cultivated through relationships, effort, and an open heart. The girl looked forward to the future with hope and excitement. She understood that life would continue to have challenges, but she now had the strength, support, and resilience to face them. She knew that with kindness, patience, and courage, she could continue to grow, explore, and experience joy. The father and his son had not just changed her days, they had changed her life, showing her that even in the face of adversity, love, friendship, and hope could light the way. And so, the girl's story reached a beautiful turning point. She walked with confidence, laughed freely, created with joy, and embraced the world with an open heart. Her life, once quiet and filled with loneliness, was now alive with connection, growth, and the promise of endless possibilities. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every small step, every shared laugh, and every moment of courage. She had learned that real-life change comes quietly, patiently, and steadily, and that in the warmth of genuine relationships. Even the deepest sadness can give way to happiness, hope, and a future full of promise.